In this third Photoshop video, I am going to show you how to remove the background from an image. Uh, this vase that we've been working on in previous videos has a really nice background, and for the paper itself, for the research paper, you can see here that I simply cropped into the image. But on the video presentation, I really wanted to highlight just the vase without the background and make it a little bit more artistic. I also did this with the sculptural relief of Medusa. So I'm going to teach you how to remove backgrounds in Photoshop. Sometimes not only do you want to make them a little bit more artistic, but say, if you're looking at this image, it's got a really nice neutral background. It doesn't interfere with how you art. But as you're working on your paper and you see another work of art that is perfect, but the background is very distracting, this would be another instance of wanting to remove the background, and you could even place that image in your paper. Here's another example too. The image itself isn't that great, but like the background there, you might want to remove the background, but this one's a particularly fine example of a background that you probably want to remove so that the viewer can focus on the work of art. So what we're going to want to do is go to Photoshop, and there are a couple of ways to do this. First of all, you're going to want to crop the image and remove as much excess background as possible. So if you remember, we use the crop tool and we pull in using the handles on the left and the right and the top and the bottom until you get it where you want it. And then we double click. And what that'll do is remove it. Now, in order to remove the background, we're going to have to work with layers. So if you remember in the previous video, we clicked on the lock to remove it as the background layer and create a layer. And we will just call this base. In every Photoshop file where I'm working on images or altering them in some way, I like to save a separate copy of the original image just in case. So what you're going to want to do is select the layer of the vase and right click on it and choose duplicate layer. This can also be done under the layers palette where it says duplicate layer or duplicate. And here's the vase copy. You can rename this so it's the original image. And once that puts it at the top layer, I want to move it to the back and I want to turn that off. So the image that I'm going to work with is that first layer. But if something happens to the image, I've got the original right here. Now what we want to do is remember to save the image, save as, and let's just call this one Silo because we're going to silhouette the image. And let's save it as a Photoshop file. And now we can get going. There are a couple of different selection tools that you're familiar with in the tutorials. There's the square selection tool. Of course, you can hold this down and you can do different ellipticals and things like that. But there's also a magic wand tool that's neat that you have to come down here, magic wand tool, and say, when you have a solid black image against a white background, you can click on the background, and if you look at the tolerance is 32, let's just do 32 should be about average, and you click on the background, what it'll do is it'll select all of the pixels in that range using the magic wand tool. You can also click Shift key, which is to add. Remember, the Shift key is to add. And you can click again in that bottom. And really, it looks like it did a pretty good selection of all the background. One way to determine how close it got and how good it got is to highlight your magnifying glass tool and just drag across and let's look at the edges of this. And if you look, the edges is really nice and clean. And it really did a good job of selecting all of the background. See here? Very good. Now, you're going to have some problems using that selection tool on areas like this, where the background is very close to the item, the color of the item. So why don't we do this? Why don't we choose the lasso tool, and you've got 3 different lassos: quick, polygonal, and magnetic. And we want to choose polygonal because what we want to do is we want to click to select around this area. Since we've already got, and remember the view to fit in screen is Command 0, we've already got the background selected. And so what you can do under selection is you can save your selection so that way if you click off of it, and let's just call it Silo, and we'll put it in a new channel. So this is the silhouette we've already started. And that way, if, say, for instance, you click off of it and you're adding things and changing things, you can go back to Select and you can choose Load Selection, and then you can pull down to Silo and click OK, and that'll load that selection. Now what we want to do is we want to add the background here and here. Now if you are using this image here, you're not going to be able to use that the selection tool like I just did because there's too many colors going on. In other words, if you tried to select it with that magic wand tool, it would just select one little area. You'd be clicking all day trying to get that. So the way you would want to select it is you want to go around the edges with the lasso tool, like I'm getting ready to do here in this area. All right, so let's load that selection again. Silo, okay, and now let's use the magnifying glass and let's pull up so we can see our edges, and go to the lasso tool, polygonal lasso tool. Now we have selection currently there, so you have to hold down your shift key. There are 2 commands when using selections: shift key adds and option key subtracts. If you hold down your shift key, you see how there's a plus sign next to the lasso? That means you're adding to the selection. If you hold down your option key, that's the minus sign, and you are subtracting from the selection. So since I want to add this gray background to the selection, I'm going to hold down my shift key, and I only have to do it to get started and start clicking. Once I start clicking, you can let up off of it. But here you just want to do some gentle little clicks and trace with your clicks around the outside, around the edge of the work of art. And you can see, here's an example of me getting into the image, which I didn't want to do. So I'm going to finish my selection, and then I'm going to clean that up, and I'll show you how to clean that up. So here we have Alright, and there we have the selection of the vase. Now here, you see I've selected too much, and what I want to do is I want to remove that portion and from the selection. So you remember the option key is to subtract. So I'll just click here. And that's how to remove it. Okay, now do Command 0 to show all. Now you can see how that has been added to the background selection. So here, let's save it. Save selection. You just do it a step at a time. What I want to do here, rather than creating a brand new channel, pull up Silo and we want to add to the channel. You can also replace it because we're replacing what was there. So let's add to the channel. Now if you look, click off of it, we can go to selection, we can do load selection, silo, and see there it has saved that selection. Now you want to save your file. At every step, save your file. Another thing to be aware of is under the window tab, the window menu, you can also choose history. History is a really wonderful tool because it gives you all of the things you've done all the way back. So if you mess up and you save something wrong, then you can go back to your history tool and it will take you all the way back, one step at a time. Since we've already gotten all the way through here, let's go to the end so that they're all active. All right, and now what we want to do is go back to, now we're going to select this part. So we choose our magnifying glass and we bring that close to us. We choose the lasso tool and we hold down the shift key because we are adding to the selection. And here it'll be tricky. You'll just have to kind of, when you're looking at highlights and shadows and areas that are hit by highlights, you may have to guess where the edge of the item is, like I did on that left-hand side. Okay, now Command 0 will fit in window, and remember that the view fit on screen. So now we have that whole thing selected. So let's save the selection, pull down. We want to go back to the silo. We can do add to or replace. We can do replace. And now save your file. Now what we have is the whole background selected. And what we can do is we can actually just hit the delete key and that'll remove all of the background from that image. So therefore, if I were to create a layer, a background layer, and if I were to select all, Command 0, and fill with, let's just fill it with black. You can see that now the vase sits on a beautiful black background. Okay, so what we want to do is now save the Photoshop file. The only way for your presentation, be it a PowerPoint or Muse, to save this image without a background, it has to be a PNG file. It cannot be a TIFF, it cannot be a JPEG, it has to be a PNG file. So once you have that saved, go to Save As, and now we're going to save the silhouette as a PNG file. And if you scroll down, there it is. And if you look, it will add PNG to the end of that, and we're saving it in the right place. So now we can say Save. Click the defaults, it's fine. So now when we go to Word and we say, let me create a new file, and we insert a photo picture from File. And let's pull down to Images. And there's the silo, the PNG file. There's the vase without the background. So in some instances like that, let's see, hold on. Now if you remember, this is a really good example, because if you look at the bottom right and left corner, of that image. Do you see how there's gray left over? And if you remember when we used the magic wand tool to select, if you remember we used the magic wand tool to select down there, what it did was it didn't select all the gray pixels. So what you're going to want to do on this image is you're going to want to use your square selection tool to just draw across, and you can see some of the gray. Let me pull up on this a little bit. See, there's the gray down at the bottom that the magic wand tool did not pick up because it was in a different shade, and there's some there too. So we can simply use the square selection tool and then click delete. Remember, we're on the background layer. We need to be on the vase layer. And click delete, and you see that it removed all those gray pixels at the bottom corner. And so now what we want to do is go back and save as. We'll save the Photoshop file, and then we will go back and save as a PNG again. Okay, PNG. And when we click save, it'll say, do you want to replace the other file? Yes, we do. So here, when I go to Insert, Photo, Picture from File, and I go back to the image folder and insert the new PNG file. Make it smaller so they sit side by side. You can see that that new file does not have any of these little gray spots at the bottom of the left and the right. So that is a video on silhouetting. If you have any questions or need any more information, please post your questions in the comments section under the video on YouTube, and I'll get back to you.